Object-oriented programming, class, variables, and methods. So let's first consider the following problem. We have a software that has a great number of fish. Fish in the oven, fish in the sea, fish in the lake, fish in the market, fish in a boat that is going to fish, going to fishing, and etc. There are lots of fish. And what if we want to know how many fish have been created? How many fishes exist in our program? So how do we know when the fish is born, or how do we keep count of all the fish? Well, the creation of fish is tied to the constructor. That is very simple. Always when constructor is called, then a fish is created. And in construction we just increase the number of fish, so we have some kind of a variable. But where should the counting variable be placed? That's the problem. Can it be instance variable, or should we have some kind of a global variable? Let's see. Placing the variable as an instance variable doesn't work. It's a bad thing. It would be tied to the objects, others wouldn't be able to update it. So basically every fish had a different counter. So it makes no sense. We cannot count the fishes through that kind of a thing. So global variable could work if Java had any. It doesn't, but for example in C++ you could have global variable. But we are object-oriented programmers. We don't like the idea of global variables. That's usually a bad thing. So there may be a need for a variable that is shared between objects. So all the fishes would have access to the same variable. How we do that? So it should be, the variable should be part of all objects and in a way part of none of the objects. So we need some kind of a solution for that. And it is possible to create class variables, basically static data members. So when we are defining class variable with keyword static, then it's not as objects variable, it's classes. And it can be done like this. So we can have a private variable called variable static integer, and that might be the one we would use to count the fish. And class variables are close to global variables. They exist even if there are no objects created. So we could have a fish class, and the fish class would have the variable, although we had created no fish objects. And you can reference a class variable in the same way as instance variables, so through the objects, and outside a class you could reference with the syntax class name dot class variable if the class variable is a public one. And then there is this object class variable way, of course, too, but once again the variable needs to be public if we are accessing it like that. So basically it can be used in the same way as an instance variable, and it can be set to private, so it's not visible outside the class. So what about then we have this static keyword? Can we create a class or static method? Yeah, we can do that. So then this method is not tied to any object. It's similar to these class variables. So once again we add the static keyword, and of course this kind of static method, it cannot use any instance variable or this keyword inside the implementation. So as it is not tied to any specific object, this keyword would not make any sense. It could not return any object, because this is a static method. It is related to the class, not to the object. And we have used the static method. The Java main method is a static one. So basically in Java we need to have one method that starts the program, and it's called main, and it needs to be static because we do not have any object in a state where the program is starting. Then we have a static method that is being run. Let's have an example on these static variables and methods. So let's try to find out how many rockets we have in this program. So we need to use this static variable to have this number of rockets. So let's first build the variable. We have a rocket counter which is 0 here, and then always when we are creating a new rocket we will increase this counter. So here is the place where we create a rocket. So rocket counter should be increased like this, and then we should have some kind of way to get this number. Now it's private, so let's build a getter method for that. And when we are talking about the static variables, then we need to also have a static method, otherwise we would not be able to get the correct number if we do not have any instance of the class. So it's integer what we are getting. This could be actually get number of rockets, and the only thing this is doing is just returning the rocket count like this. And now every time we have been creating a rocket, so basically we are calling some kind of a rocket builder constructor, for example starship, and this starship is calling this super constructor, which means that it's calling this one here. So then we are increasing the rocket counter, and in the end here we can get the number of rockets, in this program, and then let's try to find it. So how do we get access to that? We could use some object, but we can use the class itself. So we can call the rocket, and this rocket has this get number of rockets method. So now we are calling class method through this class name. Let's see what happens. So in the end we have been building 8 rockets in this program. So let's see, we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, this is not rocket. So 8, that is correct. So this is how we could calculate how many instances of one object type we have. So we create a static member variable, and then we have a method to get that variable, and in constructor we are increasing this, and it's increasing the static variable, so it is the same variable in every object, which is different from the name that is varies. It's different. This name is unique to all the object, but this rocket counter is the same. And then how we could use this static variables and methods. It's a common use case that there should be only one instance of a class, so you could build only one object out of some class. For example, we have a database and we want to write something to that database, and then we have only one object, database object, that is doing all the writing and reading. So if we would have several objects, then they could overlap in that sense that some object would be writing to place A and the other object could be writing to same place, and which one is winning then we wouldn't know. So we would have only one database object. That would be better. And the specific instance should be easily accessible to other object, of course. So we would have one object and some way to get access to that object. So then there is a problem. How to make sure that there is only one instance, only one object? And how to make sure that everyone can access it? Let's see. This is called singleton. It's a design pattern, and it's working by using class variables and functions together. And the idea is that now we can be sure that there is only one instance existing. So the object is easy access, and it's done by this. So we create some kind of a class. Here we call it singleton. It can be, for example, International Space Station or whatever. And we define that there is a private static singleton instance, which is first defined null, so there is no instance, but it's the type is the class itself. Then there is a constructor here called singleton, and it's private. So we have no way to build the class with the new keyword from outside the class. And then we have a static method called getInstance, and this getInstance is just checking that do we have this instance. If it's null, then we will create a new instance, new singleton, and then we will return it. And if it's already existing, so instance is not null, then we just return the instance. Let's have an example. Let's build this our International Space Station as a singleton, so we have only one International Space Station. Okay, about the singleton, so we would like to have one of our classes as a singleton, and the logical thing is here this ISS. We have only one ISS available, so let's modify this so that we cannot create more than one instance of this class. So first of all, we need to take care that there is no way to create this ISS object otherwise than what we define. So now the constructor is private, which means that this ISS cannot be created anymore just like this because the constructor is private. So no way to create new object there. So that's good. Then we need to build a way to have this ISS object. So let's have a private static ISS equals null. So now we don't have it's in the beginning the ISS is null, so we do not have the actual object. Then we are creating a method to get that. So we are building a static method which is returning the ISS, get ISS. And first we check that if ISS equals null, then we know that there is no ISS yet, and then we create it ISS. So here inside this class we can of course call this private constructor. So this is fine. Here we can use this new call, which is not possible here because of this constructor being private, but inside this class it's fine. And then we need to return this ISS variable. So in the beginning we said that this static variable is null. Then we can have a static method getISS, which is returning the ISS type object, and if the variable is null, then we just create a new International Space Station. So we are not calling this new ISS, but we are calling getISS. And now we have a ISS and we can add rocket there. Let's see that this is still working. So this is providing that the ISS has this one starship. Okay, that is good. Then let's create a second ISS. Like this. Now we have a second variable. It should be the same. So if we are listing the rockets now, listing the ISS2. So we are not adding any rockets to this ISS, but it should be the same. Let's see. So this is the ISS1 variable and this is the ISS2 variable. They have the same starship. So this is working. When we are getting the instance of ISS, it's always the same. So we cannot have more than one ISS. So we have been building this singleton, so it's working. Only one instance of this class can be built. And as a conclusion, class/static variables and methods are handy when you have parts that do not fit into one object. And they also give you tools to build concepts like singleton.